One of the most important things you can do in Palworld is plan your base locations. Over the course of a game, you'll be able to place down 3 bases, and you need to get as many resources passively as you can from your pals harvesting things so that you can do the fun stuff, capturing more pals and putting them in the meat grinder that is the pal condenser. Now, you could make a base that is horribly ugly and mostly functional, pals get stuck. Okay, maybe that's just me. I wanted it to be super pretty and aesthetic, and every time I made it prettier, my pals just got stuck more, and so I ended up with ugly and half functional, and I really need to just rip the whole thing out, level it, and put it somewhere else. Or you can do what my friends have done, and gone with an extremely open setup that's super accessible. This works really, really well for a breeding base, a production base, a base where your pals don't need any natural resources. And so today, I wanted to talk about the places where you do need natural resources. Where do you find ore? Where do you find quartz? Where do you find metal? Where do you find coal to make better metal? All the things that you need to progress. And so here are some base locations, or just regular locations if you want to go harvest things yourself, that I've found to be ideal. They're not all perfect, and there might even be better ones. Feel free to recommend some below. Oh, and if you like this content, maybe drop a follow while you're down there. Or I guess get subscribed. Either way, you can follow my Twitch, subscribe to my YouTube, whatever works best for you. So early on, you're going to need a lot of ore, or more accurately, you're going to need the metal bars smelted from that ore. This is useful because as your technology advances, you replace your stone and wooden tools with metal ones. So you'll want to establish an ore base. This would be a base that has a bunch of pals with mining proficiency and very little else. Because the more things are in your base, well, the less space that you have, and the more mixed proficiencies you have, the less efficient the pals are overall. This is why hyper-optimized endgame bases specialize in using pals who can only do one task. And personally, I've found that when I go for a minimalist approach, no unnecessary buildings, clearing trees, etc., etc., oh, and drop a foundation after you clear a tree to stop it from respawning, then things do work the best. The first location that I would recommend is at 0, -520. This is great for a first base because it has a lot of nodes, and in general, raids only come from one direction, which means you don't have to worry too much about your defenses. In fact, most of the time you won't be at your ore base, so you won't have to worry about raids at all. But if that is a concern for you, especially if you're in a more persistent multiplayer world, then I can absolutely see wanting the extra defenses, and maybe even putting a gunner lamball or something on an embankment, or maybe just ignoring it because your pals are probably going to murder the raiders anyway. Alternatively, you could go with 0, -90. I think this is going to be a spot that's open on more servers because space is more limited. You may need to build up here, which can cause problems, especially for larger pals who tend to get stuck rather than navigating stairs. My own personal solution to this is using roofing tiles as ramps. For whatever reason, pals seem to be better at navigating up and down sloped roofs than they are up and down stairs. But who knows, hopefully in the future, some pathing fixes will eliminate this problem entirely. Again, it's easy to defend, raids will only come from one direction, and there's plenty of ore nodes, all 8, and I don't know of very many locations that have more than 8. But personally, I think this last location, at -30, -180, is much better, because it has 8 ore, 1 coal, and a skill tree. Late game, you won't worry about this skill tree. It tends to give more common skills. But early game, it's a really nice bump to get some sweet moves for your pals. And the coal will come into effect later as you start to make refined metal. This requires both ore and coal. And it's really good for your first base to slowly be building up a trickle of it as you're processing everything else. The space is quite easy to utilize, and for a long time, this is where I had my ore base located, until I ended up moving it somewhere else because I wanted even more coal and didn't need ore so often. Oh, and also right over the hill, there's a Free Pal Alliance camp, which you can raid for free pals. How nice of them. But as your technology advances, and especially as you start to unlock guns, you'll need more and more resources that come specifically from having coal. This lets you make refined metal. Now, the best place I found, and the one that you should put your base on at a solo server, is 190 -40. Not only does it offer a beautiful view, but it has copious amounts of both coal and iron ore. The ground isn't very flat, so building can be a little bit difficult here, and occasionally my flying pals would get stuck outside the bounds of the area. But it's well worth it, since the resource efficiency here is absolutely insane. If you have problems with your pals going after trees, cut them down, drop a foundation, that'll lock it out without issue. Unfortunately, on a multiplayer server, this area is almost always going to be taken because it's just way too good. So I do have a couple of alternatives which aren't as good. I really struggled here to find a base that had both ore and coal. Just ore by itself, easy. Just coal by itself, easy. Both together, really hard. But here's two alternatives. The first is at 270 minus 220. It has 8 ore and 6 coal. And this is a spot that I really wanted to love. It's also beautiful, and the verticality is cool. But unfortunately, even with slopes, I couldn't actually get my pals to easily go up and down the cliff face. You can place the pal box such that it hits most of the nodes here. And you can try to split the base entirely, where you have one set of pals working up top and another set working down at the bottom. But most of the time, they end up getting confused and just trying to do each other's jobs, which doesn't go well. And so, since my pals ended up getting stuck, I kind of abandoned the entire location. But if PAL AI improves, or you can lock them to specific tasks such as mine, this node and only this node, it's going to be an insane spot. Then the other place I found is 300 minus 20. You set up your base on one, either the ore or the coal, and then you just manually mine the other. Yeah, it's a little awkward and it is a split base, but it is ideal for busier servers as I don't think that many people are going to come across it or want to deal with the inconvenience of mining in two different locations. So you might be able to snag it, or hey, on a busier server, work with a friend. They mine a bunch of ore, you mine a bunch of coal, and every once in a while you just trade. It's not perfect, and I do wish I had a better location for this, but it does work, and I tried it out a little bit, it's okay. Moving on towards the late game, you'll also need quartz and sulfur. I would kind of consider these to be specialist resources. Now, I don't actually think that you really need a permanent base for either of these. For sulfur, I just go to the fire tower, harvest all the nodes, and then fly to a lower area if I have more inventory space, which I usually don't, and harvest more there. But you could establish a permanent base on the lower area. I'm pretty sure I didn't actually try putting down the PAL box. It just looks like there's enough room. Quartz, on the other hand, you need a little bit more, especially for when you're building a lot of stuff in a production base. So I would actually consider temporarily making a mining outpost. If you just want to mine it yourself, I suggest going to the base of the ice tower. This is where you get a skill fruit tree that has some of the best skills in the game, so you should be coming here regularly, and you might as well grab a little bit of quartz while you do. For that, I would head over to the plateau at negative 200, 250. This is in an Arctic zone, which means you're going to need either electric heaters or alternatively cold resistance armor and maybe even a fire pal. But it has a lot of really good quartz nodes, and there's just enough room to place down the pal box. Since it's located on top of a plateau, your pals can mine safely without having to worry about getting raided. And this will give you enough quartz to build pretty much anything that you want. Now, most of my experience has been on solo worlds, so I don't know how popular this is in multiplayer, but it seems like a really good spot, and so I wanted to highlight it. So those are the best locations that I've found. I have to say, finding ore is relatively easy. There's plenty of other spots that are all really good. They might not have 8 nodes, they might have 6. It's more than enough. What I really struggled for was finding both ore and coal together. There's coal nodes. A good example of this is right near Anubis' spawn. I remember there being, I think, 2 or even 3 different spots that had a bunch of coal. You could put down your base, hatch a bunch of warm weather eggs, have no problems at all. On the other hand, if you want both together so that your base automatically produces everything that you need for the entire mid-game, oh boy, is it rough. Really, the location around 190 negative 40 is the only place that I found which actually has it in abundance. If you're playing on a solo world, that's fine. Just make your cliff-top base, don't even worry about it. If you're playing on a group world, you're going to have to get a little more creative, which is why I wanted to put in some alternatives. But that said, I haven't explored every corner of the Galapagos Islands. So if you have, and have some awesome spots, do put them down below, try to add the coordinates, and let's start a conversation. If you're looking for something else to watch, maybe check out the video where I talked about the PAL that literally carried me to level 40 on its rather broad back, or some beginner tips and tricks to help you get started if you need a little bit more help. Or of course, you can always come back for the next one where I'm going to be talking about something else or maybe looking at the game as a whole. And hey, look at the good news. If requiring your base to be fully optimized was mandatory to get to endgame, then I never would have gotten as far as I did. Since I've been putting a lot of time and effort into min-maxing my pals, but not nearly as much into min-maxing my base layout, I'm still using the same ugly, half-functional layout that I was very near the start. I really should fix that, but it's a pain to move all the resources that I've accumulated, so for now I just haven't. With that said, my base is functional for resources, it does produce the food that I need, and lets me breed pals pretty quickly, so I can't be too unhappy with it, even if it's not optimal. Then for my third base, I just kinda move it around depending on what I need. And now, before I go, I'd like to take a minute to thank my patrons and channel members for their continued support. For as low as $1 a month, you can help make videos just like this one possible. Link to support is down below. But that's all for me today. Thank you very much for watching to the end. I hope you learned something, good luck in your base placement, don't get raided too often, and I'll see you again sometime soon.